Well, I wish you all very well, and I am in front of you with my desire to share with you my readings on human life and my personal perceptions of the same so that I ease myself of the pressure that I have been feeling for some time that I should speak on this topic, and also to have the pleasure of sharing with people at large, with the audience at large. Human life is a blessing. Hindu scriptures say that human life is a special life. It is a blessed life because among the countless lives, infinite number of lives, human life is supposed to be the most superior life. And that is why it has a special place among the millions and millions of creatures in this universe. At the same time, human life is supposed to be an interval for expiation, for tests, rigorous tests, for punishments, or for trials and tribulations. Buddha, one of the human beings who had been in a very foggy situation, he would think a lot about life, would meditate on the sorrows of life, on the sufferings of life, on the crippling stages of life, even though he had all these ideas, all these apprehensions, or all these foggy perceptions about life when he was very young. He was recently married, newly married, having a very nice family, having royalty as the heritage. Even then, he was not satisfied. He was in a fix what to do, and he was desperate to come out of his life that was so cozy, so comfortable, yet extremely disturbed, not having peace and stability. And he therefore decided to leave his palace and go out wherever he could in search of answers to his questions. And the questions were like this: what is human life? How is it different from other lives? Why is so much of suffering in human life? Why humans become aged? Why they become old, wizened, and bent? Why they have to go through agonizing experiences, challenges, and why humans come weeping out of the wombs of their mother, and while having to leave behind the bodies on this earth and to have a passage beyond in the spiritual world, why humans have to weep and they have to go through immeasurable and indescribable pains in most of the cases. In some cases, maybe some humans, they leave their bodies behind and fly out in their spirits very quickly, suddenly, and sometimes in harness, working, and suddenly the heart getting arrested, and they don't even know, or even if they know only for a few seconds how it feels like having the passage from this earthly world into the spiritual world. So, so many versions, so many perceptions, so many readings of human life, that human life is the best and human life is the worst. Even poets like John Keats, in his poems, has come out with this perception of his that human life is worse than the lives of birds, particularly the singing birds, the birds that soar up in the sky, or the birds that remain perched up on the branches of the trees and sing to the world. And they don't have to weep, they don't have to come into fever, they don't have to go through the trials and tribulations and the heat of tuberculosis. John Keats died of tuberculosis. His brother had died of tuberculosis, whom he had nursed so warmly. And on his death, who had wept so bitterly. So, life is supposed to be that existence which begins at the birth and ends at death. So, the span of life is between the birth and the death. And this life is extremely foggy. Foggy in the sense you don't know what is going to happen tomorrow, what is happening now, even that you can't guess for sure. And when people come to a stage in life, then they think in terms of their own lives and life in general, that life's past, life's present, and life's future. A human being having spent 20 years, 25 years, or 5 years, or 30 years, and human being living yet not dead, and human beings planning to have actions set, plans set for the future, because death is not known. When it is to knock on the door, that is not known. So, confusion. Man proposes, God disposes. Man proposes to have actions, to have routines set for 20 years, but only one day after the routines are made, the timetables are made, the plans are made, the man is off into the other world. He leaves his body behind. And that is why it's very foggy. Foggy also in the sense that you decide to be a military officer, and then suddenly, on the way to your training institute, you get into an accident. You are admitted to a hospital, and there you are advised to have a rest for 3 months or 6 months. During that period of your stay in a hospital, you have to pass time, because it is very difficult to, to pass time. You don't meet people, you don't speak with them, you have to remain silent, you have to eat regulated food. You can't walk out, you can't go into the fresh air, you can't see the birds flying up in the sky. You are almost imprisoned in your hospital bed. And there, perhaps, you find some relief reading some magazines, some papers, some books. And incidentally, you read some books, you read some magazines, and you read about, you can say, the saints and the sages, the brave people, the people who have foresight, the people who have faith in some power that is unseen. And then gradually you change, your mind changes, your goal changes. You had decided to become a military officer, and then during your stay in the hospital for 3 months or 6 months, your reading of the books and magazines and papers and your meditations, your thinking, all these combine to have a change in your thinking. And you decide that no, never ever you would go for having the position of a military officer, for which you had been selected also, and you had to join the training. But now, after these readings, after your meditations, and after processes of different kinds of thoughts in your mind, you decide not to be that, but to be, you can say, a yogi, or a social worker, or, or a social reformer, or a mendicant, or suppose you can say friar. And you altogether, you give up the idea of the army career, and you come into this spirituality, to live as a person in search of spirituality, in search of peace of mind, in search of solving the riddles of life. And That is an example that human life is foggy. You see a road for yourself, and then something happens suddenly, and that road you don't have any affinity for. You want to change that road, and you change that road, and you take up another road that is extremely different from the one that you had chosen earlier. This is an example of life being foggy. Another example of life being foggy is that you consider someone as your friend, as your guide, as someone who has well wishes for you, and you trust him, spend some time, and you give that person everything that you have, thinking that he would prove to be a better custodian of your property, of your asset. But only 6 months after or 5 years after, you get disillusioned and you come to the conclusion that your choice was not good. Your assessment of the person's personality, mind was not correct, and you have been cheated. You have not been, you can say, given any advantage, any positive advantage out of that companionship, but you have been cheated. So perhaps your life was not lighted. You are in a fog. Your wisdom was not solid, and you had a wrong assessment of your life's companion, and then you you feel very bad, you feel hurt, and then somehow you part with that companionship. Another example of fogginess. And life has mysteries. They say life has mysteries, so many mysteries. A mystery is the one that is difficult to understand. A mystery is the one that is like a riddle, that is difficult to get through, that is difficult to, you can say, comprehend. And our life, human life, is full of mysteries. Someone considers life as a bed of roses, and then you have other people or someone else who considers life as a bed of thorns. This is also an example of mysteriousness of life. When we come to literature, serious literature, literature by Shakespeare, then we see how Macbeth, when he has lived his life and he has achieved so many things, and it is time for him to enjoy the honor and enjoy the power and the position that he has been given by his patronizing king, then mysteriously he happens to hear certain predictions of the witches. And witches symbolically are everywhere, and they are always to trap honest people or good people or plain people having set directions to travel. And these witches have predictions about Macbeth, that he would be Thane of Cawdor. And when that proves to be true, another prediction is made that he will be the king of Scotland. And then his ambition gallops. He shares this prediction with his wife, and she advises him to murder the king who visits his residence to honor him, because he has done honor to the king by winning the battle and by acting as a very brave and honest, you can say, army officer. So the wife of this general happens to be over ambitious, and she makes her husband ambitious, rather equally ambitious, and the murder is committed. And then a time comes in his life when he realizes how hollow has been his life. And he, being a human being, if life can become hollow to one individual, life can be hollow to other individuals also. And then he mourns his fate, and he mourns the poverty of his life. And thereby he laments how difficult it is to understand and assess what life is. And he speaks about what he considers life to be. Life is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. So this is what he finds his life like, that his life has been busy, extremely active, extremely noisome, but ultimately, what has he got? He has got the slander, stain of a murderer. He has lost his sleep. He has lost his wife. He has lost his honor. He has lost his friend Banco, who helped him on occasions countless in his life and who trusted him. But Macbeth is afraid of Banco revealing what he has done to his own king, and therefore Macbeth gets Banco murdered. So all these feelings of guilt, the regicide and the murder of his friend, and his guilty conscience makes him realize that life has been hollow, life has been empty. It has been a story of foolishness. It has been a story of vacuity. The same thing happens, suppose another character of Shakespeare. I'm talking about some of the characters of the world of Shakespeare, who is counted as perhaps the greatest dramatist of the world of all times. And he had represented life of all shades, the best of human life and the worst of human life, the best of human beings and the worst of human beings as characters in his creative world. And Hamlet, another hero of a tragedy. And these tragic heroes have tested or have faced the mysteries of life, so many mysteries. But each of the heroes of Shakespeare, tragic heroes, uh, points out to the most glaring mystery, or the most, you can say, pressing mystery that these heroes feel. And he says, this Hamlet, to be or not to be, that's the question. To suffer from the slings of tortuous fortune, or to take up arms against a sea of trouble. So Hamlet is indecisive. He's too noble and too meditative and too much conscientious and too much sensitive to take a decision about an action to be taken, so that he relieves himself of the tension or of the doubts as to who might have murdered his father. And even when he knows or he gets hints about the murderer, and he thinks that his own mother is a party to that murder, but he's not sure. So, in the condition of his doubts, in the state of his doubts, he is in a dilemma how to clear the doubts out and how to be sure that the revenge has to be taken. And he is too conscientious. He can't take a rash decision. And that is how he goes on thinking and thinking and thinking, but he delays the action. The action is taken, but by the time it is too late. So he has his own statement of the mystery of life, that it doesn't give you clarity. It doesn't give you a kind of certainty so that you come into action. It keeps you all the time swinging between what is good, what is bad, what is sure, what is unsure, what is clearly clean, and what is not clear about its cleanliness or about its distinctness. And that is also one of the mysteries of life. Yet another character, King Lear. So when he comes to realize that Cordelia has been done to death, and he is so much repentant about that Cordelia, who had always loved him as a great daughter, as a good daughter, but he suspected her of being, you can say, miserly in the expression of her love for her father. And he trusts the two ungrateful daughters of his, who profess total, absolute love for him without giving consideration to love that they would have for their husbands, their sisters, other relatives, friends, and the general human being. And King Lear then he says, why should, why should dogs and crows and cockroaches and snakes, means all these mean animals, he talks about, why should they have life and not Cordelia? Cordelia's life is taken off, and Goneril and Regan and Duke of Albany, the husbands of his daughters. So all these people, bad people, Edmund, all these people, they live, and they live with activity. They live with glaring presence. And the best that Cordelia was, she is no more. This is mystery. Why? Why such things happen that the perpetrators, the sinners, the criminals, the rogues, they prosper in material life. They prosper in physical life. And those who are good, saintly, clean, fragrant, and very nice, very soft. And these people, they have to leave the world in extremely tragic situations. Then again, you have another character, Othello, a great character, although of a mean, you can say what you call heritage, familial heritage, ugly, physically not very handsome, not very attractive, but because of his great qualities as a human being, he gets the love of a Venetian beauty, Desdemona, and she marries him, and they live together as wife and husband, very loving wife and husband. But because of the villainy of Iago, a character, a bad character, there is suspicion, the poison that is planted in the mind of Othello, that Desdemona is not sexually loyal to her husband, and she has an affair with an officer under Othello, Cassio. And Iago wants to destroy the happiness of the lives of Othello and Desdemona. So Othello, he realizes, although he's wrong, he believes in the words of Iago, or you can say his wife Emilia, and he thinks that Desdemona has been disloyal to him, and he decides to kill her, decides to make an end of her life. But before that, he is in a reflective mood, and he remembers the past. He remembers the days when he and Desdemona were courting each other, and he exclaims, when I have plucked up the rose, I can't give it vital growth again. It needs must wither, smell it on the tree. So Desdemona, the rose, about to be plucked out of the bushes of life, and she to be sent to the other world, the dark world, the unseen world. And Othello is going to do that, but he remembers his past days, and he still thinks that Desdemona once was a rose, having fragrance, sweet fragrance, but now, because of her disloyalty, she has lost all that. Still, some fragrance is there. So before she is killed, she is to be smelt by Othello. This is a mystery. That relationships change. The faith of people changes. And the one who is so dear, so loving, that person becomes an enemy. This is also, and that happens so very soon, in a trice. And you feel that this is something unbelievable. So everywhere you have mysteriousness that haunts the minds of the human beings. Thomas Hardy is a great novelist of the 19th century, and he also made so many characters. And one of the prominent characters of a novel of his, The Mayor of Casterbridge. So he also talks about the mystery of life. He says that when I was poor, that is the meaning of his statement, of his dialogue, that when I was poor, I needed everything. I wanted to have so many things. My wants were unlimited, but I was not in a position to fulfill any of my needs. I could not answer my needs. I could not satisfy myself. But once I became rich, he became the mayor of Casterbridge, although he was a wage earner in the beginning, a hay gatherer, a hay maker, and he sells his wife in a drunken state of his mind. And then he repents. He seeks reunion, but he had already sold out his wife to one of the petty navigators. And when he fails to retrieve his wife, he starts living separately, and he starts, you can say, acting, or you can say working in the right direction, and he becomes the mayor of Casterbridge, an imaginary, suppose, city. And after he has power and wealth, everything, then he realizes, and he says that when you are in poverty, then you have scarcity, you have wishes, you have passions, you always want to have. But once you have lots of money, perhaps the you can surfeit of money that you have, you don't have desires. Your passions to have, these passions get killed, or they get lost. This is also one of the mysteries of life. We have so many examples where human beings have come out with the idea that how uh, those who are always, you can say, in the right direction in the socially established ways, and these people suffer. And those who are against the social norms or social values, or the values that are supposed to be really human values, and these people suffer. Then again, you have the mystery. Uh, you have a great writer, another English writer, Jonathan Swift, and he talks about yahoos in his novel, Gulliver's Travels. And he talks about Lilliputians, and he talks about different kinds of, you can say, human beings. Those who are greedy, ferocious, tortuous, and ditching type, and they succeed everywhere. And those who are faithful, honest, loyal, straight walking, they suffer. So human life has mysteries countless. Human life's roads are foggy every now and then you end up in death. But before that, you have to take so many winding, serpentine, you can say, roads or ways or routes to reach a destination. But what is the destination? You succeed because people say that you have succeeded, and you have the feeling that you have succeeded. But that success leads to your destruction. You buy lottery tickets, saving, you can say, pennies, and that also troubles your life. But you save pennies to buy a lottery ticket. You get the lottery ticket, and you win the lottery, and money comes to you. And once money comes to you, people get to know about that. And some of the bad people, in order to rob your money, they kill you. So see, another mystery, that all your life you save some money honestly, and then at times you buy tickets, and most of the times you don't suppose get any money. But one final time when you get so much of money that you can live rest of your life comfortably, and leave some money for those who happen to succeed you, or you could give to other people. If you don't have relatives, you get gone, you are killed. This is a mystery. that so much of uncertainty, so much of discrepancies, so much of irregularities, and you don't have any control. Human life, you can do actions, but your actions would bear you results, desirable results, you don't know. So, in all these cases, we find that human life is uncertain. Human life is terminable anytime. A healthy person, a happy person, becomes very sad, becomes diseased, and the beauty that he has, that beauty is gone. He becomes ugly. Nobody wants him to be their companion. Nobody invites him. Nobody talks to him, and he's ostracized. This is a mystery that only a few days ago you were the center of attraction. You would be asked for, you'd be invited, and then what happens in 5 6 days that you are changed or you are converted into an untouchable. You are made not to be, you can say, not to be in the companions of your, you can say, former society, but you are ostracized and you suffer such a lot. And then again, you have this idea also that why should I live? Why not commit suicide? You wrote a book earlier, or you would move preaching out to people, speaking to people that life is precious and this life has to be lived naturally. Death, you should not create for yourself. You should not trap your life. And you should not commit suicide because that's a sin. So many years of your, you can say, convincing people how important it is for them to be brave, to be, you can say what, courageous, to challenge the challenges of life, to overcome the problems of life, to sustain them, and to move forward, to live on. So that when life has to come to an end naturally, that has to be accepted. But you don't do that. You commit suicide. So many examples are there. So our control is almost nil, or if not almost nil, it is the minimum. And most of the time, we are supposed in wanderings. We are in search of things that we want to get, but we don't get. So, very difficult to understand life. Great men have come and gone. Generations have come and gone. From the ancient time to the present time, seers, scholars, saints, they have written books, they have left behind their oral stories, and still people now, some of them are of that height, that ilk, but none of them has been able to solve the problems, or to, you can say what you call, to demystify the mysteries of the world. The mysteries had been, the mysteries are, and the mysteries will remain. Knowledge will be claimed to have been gained, knowledge will be lost, and knowledge will again be, you can say, discovered or recovered, but the mysteries will remain, the fog will remain, the confusion will remain, and all that is uncertain will remain uncertain. Man will only be trying, only be seeking, and only be claiming to have got something, but that something is not sufficient. And that has continued, and that will continue. As long as this humanity survives, or the world survives, fogginess of life, mysteriousness of life will continue haunting, and there's no end to that. That's all.